Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I want to sort of come off of something I said in my speech. We wanted to work on anti-poverty. That is a sort of daunting issue that I see the state of New Jersey. So I've instructed 4 committees for next week on the 27th on an off day to have some hearings to see what information we can gather, to see what type of legislation we can create. Legal Services of New Jersey has figured in a livable wage in the state of New Jersey, and about 2.8 million residents are living below that poverty line. The federal poverty line for a family of 4 is $23,800. That, if you take that number into, you probably have a little bit over 1 million residents. But if anybody here that has an apartment or pays a mortgage, just think about that amount with 2 children and a couple. It's unattainable to be able to live on anything like that. So when you factor in the livable wage, still 2.8 million residents out of 8.8 is about over 30%. So it's almost 1 out of every 3rd person. When you look at over the last 5 decades, we have more people in poverty now than we had in the last 50 years. And when you talk about the Great Recession of '08, there's 40% more people are living in poverty in the state of New Jersey. And when we look at the state of New Jersey, 20% of our residents in the state of New Jersey own 50% of the wealth, which is something we welcome and we applaud them, but we want to make sure those other people can't get out of poverty. So we need to see how we can make this better. The state of New Jersey is a state that is of great wealth. And when we look at New Jersey and thinking about we're in 2016, it's basically embarrassing that we're here and having to talk about poverty. We need to see how we can get people out of poverty, but really get our middle class and rebuild it and get people into that middle class, because these individuals are what drives our economy. So for next Wednesday, I have instructed 4 committees that I think are very important. Human Services, that can look at existing programs and see how we're working with those programs and other ideas of what we can do to lessen the burden on these residents of the state of New Jersey. When you look at nutrition assistance, 80% of other states do a better job than New Jersey. We have to get better. We have gotten rid of assistance for housing for people that are on welfare. So the Committee for Housing and Economic Development is another committee that I asked them to have some hearings, seeing how we can make New Jersey more affordable for people to be able to have housing. That's something that we need to tackle collectively. Since COA has been in a flux, so I think that's an important committee. Women and Children is another committee that I think it's very important for them to look at for women that are head of households and seeing about job training, pay equity, and to seeing how we can assist. There's a lot of barriers, a lot of challenges in different areas that you have, people that with the language. So how can we help? Also, we have about 800,000 children that live in poverty, according to Legal Services also. So I think that is very important for this committee to look at how we can help these children. And lastly, and I think one of probably the most important, is the Transportation Committee, to look at our transportation network and how that deals with poverty, because that is how people get around. And sometimes if you have to take mass transit to get somewhere, it could take you 2 to 3 hours. So just even to get to an interview may be difficult. Jobs may be out there, but if you can't get there, you don't have a car, how do you get there? It becomes very difficult and challenging. And when you talk about mass transit, and 5 years ago we had the largest increase in history about 22%, and then now in this year another 9%. You're almost talking about a third, of what fares were has risen. So that is important to see how we can get better. How do we help these people that are the lower echelon to be able to get to these jobs, and how do we get better at it? So I think all these 4 committees focusing on this, I think this is going to be a key to rebuilding the middle class of the state of New Jersey and doing something about it, and not just, getting more people, out of poverty and helping them, to succeed. And the people that are at this level, normally their disposable income, they use it all the time. So they are actually contributing to our economy. So it's important for us to move ahead to help these people. And like I said, that's what I think we should be doing. New Jersey, like I said, it's probably in the top 3 of wealth in the state of New Jersey, in the country, I mean. So if you think about that, and you can say that a third of our residents live in poverty, that, like I said, it's embarrassing for us to be able to create, legislation to see how we can help them. So it's our duty to help the residents of the state of New Jersey.
Where is this newfound feeling that this is the issue to attack coming from?
Well, I can tell you, Michael, for me, it's these are my friends, my neighbors, people I grew up with, that I see how difficult it is. And sometimes we talk about people leaving the state of New Jersey because they can't afford to live here. The people that I see are not those people that are fleeing the state. I said the people that are trying paycheck to paycheck to survive. So this is something I can relate to, because as coming here and being on assistance with a single mother, I can tell you, it's in looking at these numbers, it's what's daunting to me. When I had seen the million residents, that number, but when I see 2.8, when it's a livable wage, because if you think about it, 23,800, the federal line that they use, that's a joke. That there's nobody in this state. If you think about that, $1,000, let's say, for rent, what do you have left? Less than $12,000 to feed, put clothing on children. They need shoes. Everything. It's very, very difficult. So I think this is the right topic to be talking about. When we talk about our middle class, we need to rebuild it.
Will increasing the minimum wage be a major topic of discussion with one of these committees?
I'm not saying that won't come up. We actually did something with the minimum wage, so it's something that, it's always could be revisited. At the federal level, we've been hearing a lot of it going to $15. Obviously, a lot of times the minimum wage is their main job for a lot of these people. It's not, it's not a supplemental income. A lot of times this is their income. So obviously that probably may come up, but I want to focus on seeing how we could, services do we have, seeing how well we are administering what we're getting, and how can we do a better job, and how, in general, housing, making sure people have the right training for jobs, and also how do they get to those jobs, being able to get those good jobs.
One other quick one, Vinny, this is because I think I missed it. You said 4 committees, I got 3. I got Human Services, Women and Children, Transportation. What was the 4th?
And housing and economic development.
Are these public hearings where anyone can testify, or is it invite only?
We're going to have invite, but it will be both. People can come in and give testimony. So we would like to hear from residents and see the challenges that they have. When I was the chairman of the Budget Committee, when we had our hearings throughout the state, a lot of times we found out a lot of problems that there were, whether they were for assistance or for if they were going to a daycare or something, problems, challenges that people have. We want to hear from them. How do we, get better at helping them?
So are these going to be like sort of purely fact-finding hearings?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
It's going to be getting testimony and getting ideas to see what type of legislation we can craft, how we can be helpful, and this is the first step to, starting early in the session to make sure that we tackle this. We always hear about, we need to, help the middle class. Well, this is a way of doing it. We need to rebuild the middle class.
You had a meeting before this with Mayor Guardian of Atlantic City and the council president. What was the point of that meeting, and have you taken a position on the proposed takeover yet?
Yeah, I have not taken a position on it yet. Obviously, if there's legislation that's important, Atlantic City, has a lot of difficulties and challenges. I met with them because they actually have felt that they had not been part of the discussions, and I always like to look at legislation from both sides of the equation and all the key stakeholders. And obviously, when we do legislation that can impact municipalities and how it sets a precedence down the road for other areas, we want to be mindful that we do the legislation, appropriately. But that was they had wanted to speak, and I'm always willing to listen to see what challenges, what ideas, and what has been going on. So that way, as I read the report that came out on Friday, that I actually pretty much read it over the weekend, and that 55-page as it relates to the legislation, how we can make the legislation better that everybody can live with.
Well, the mayor said they're going to discuss bankruptcy next week among the city leaders.
Mhm.
I mean, I believe the state has to approve that. I mean, I know Steve said he wants to avoid bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Something you wanna avoid too?
And I think everybody wants to avoid bankruptcy. I think Donald Trump is the one that I think is good at it, so probably somebody can ask him. But I think when you do that, then your bond rating really goes down. You actually, your creditors get a lot less money. If you could avoid that, that would be the right thing to do. I don't think that's something that anybody's looking to do.
In principle, can you accept the idea of a state takeover of Atlantic
Yeah,
City?
like I said, Michael, I'm looking at the legislation. Yeah, I'm always open to it, absolutely, because we need to help them, but we want to make sure what we do, it's good for the residents of that city, and those residents, that even elected these officials, they should have a seat at the table.
So you're not there yet on the Sweeney bill, for example?
Yeah, well, I actually, I'm looking at the legislation, looking at the report to seeing if there's potentially amendments that can be there. And you know what? It may be a bill that I may have in the assembly. I don't know yet. So
Surprised that the governor pocket vetoed the pilot bill and 2 companion bills yesterday.
the answer would be yes.
Why?
Yeah, because I think that was something that, it was a conditional veto. We concurred with his recommendations. And I think as what I know is that those bills were contingent on the 15 and 16 budgets of Atlantic City. So I think that may create difficulties. I don't know all the facts. I stayed here till late in the hours on Monday night to a cleanup bill on one of those bills that made it a better bill, to get it passed, to make sure that, that it was done. And I don't know the reasoning why it was vetoed.
Mr. Speaker, from what I gathered from the council president's remarks this morning, he was indicating that the rejection of those bills essentially amounted to an extortion attempt to push forward the state takeover.
I don't, I wouldn't be able to tell you that. Like I said, I don't know all the implications that not signing those bills will have. We will have to look at that. But again, like I said, I'm looking at the legislation. I have not spoken with the governor. What was his reasoning for vetoing it? Something that, that we concurred with his conditional veto.
Have you spoken with the governor, Mr. Speaker? He indicated in Iowa over the weekend that he's been in discussions with you and the Senate President about Atlantic City. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, I spoke to him, I guess, by the state of the state. I have not spoken to him since then. But we had talked about the AC potential takeover bill, and it's something that we're looking at.
Did he indicate where he was leaning to you? It sounded over the weekend like he was praising Senator Sweeney's efforts. He didn't take a specific stance, but he said that there were labor contracts in Atlantic City that were bloated. He seemed to indicate that might be something he's in favor of it. Has he tipped his hand to you? And
Yeah.
where did he give a sense of where?
Well, as what I understood, I thought they were somewhat favorable on the legislation. And like I said, I need to be comfortable with legislation that talks about, takeover of municipalities. You have a lot of other municipalities that have issues. And, and when we have done school takeovers, we haven't been the best at doing that. So we want to make sure that we do it in a mindful manner.
Speaker, the governor didn't give many reasons for most of his vetoes yesterday, but overall, he said, or his office said, that it was really kind of unfair that the legislature rushes through these bills at the end of the session. It gives them only a week, so therefore, I got to reject all these. And so does that what do you think of that, and does that undercut the legislature's content, when they just work on all these bills?
Lame duck, normally in a sign and die session, you see a lot of these bills. They've gone a lot of them through the process. These are bills that the administration knows of and actually has a pulse on them all the time. So I think that's an unfair categorization of how the process works. I can point to the fix of that pilot bill, that cleanup bill. We would say that the process on that was, hurried and gotten through, but I thought it actually made that bill a better bill. In the original pilot bill, you had a casino could put a convention center extension and not pay a dime of taxes additional. But a little old lady would do a bathroom addition and then would have to pay additional taxes. That wasn't fair. So that was done in a very quick fashion. So we do a lot of things quickly, but then he also had basically a week to review all these bills. So I don't know if his time is limited and, was not sitting down with his staff, but I think the process has been what it's always been. Yes.
When you struck the deal on the casino referendum last week, how much did it help the process that the governor was actually in the state, president? Did that help move things along?
Yeah, for me, I wanted to make sure we did it in a right fashion, and him getting in and part of the discussion, I welcome that. One of the things that I wanted to see, and again, everybody was talking that the world ended on January 11th. It didn't. That it had to be done in 2 sessions. I kept saying it did not. So the one thing is that what was going to be built was of substance. So we have them that there's minimum investment of $1 billion. So I think that was key for us to make sure for the whole state and even helping Atlantic City there was something of substance built. So him getting in the discussion, I didn't have a problem because I think it only helps when you have more people in the room. So I think it was good.
On the anti-poverty bills, do you have a timeline for when that legislation will roll out and an idea of how it'll pay for it?
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to see, what these hearings will come out, what potentially could be the legislation. If there's a price tag around it, listen, we could always get better at the current services we're doing to make sure we're being as as mindful as we implement them. But I want to move this on so it's early on, because since it is an issue, and when everybody talks about the middle class, this is how you rebuild it, by investing in the middle class.
Speaker, when you talk about it's embarrassing how large the population in New Jersey that's in poverty is, where do you put the blame for that? Is that on the policies of this administration? Have lawmakers lost their focus?
I think, what happens, coming in from this Great Recession, there's been a lot of implications. We have not bounced back, but being the former budget chairman, every time, that there was assumptions of where we were going to be, New Jersey lagged behind everybody else, whether it was on unemployment. So I don't want to lay blame on this administration, but I can tell you a lot of the policies that have come out have not been geared more toward the middle class, that's where we have to start focusing on. And I think it's a combination of different policies. Listen, we have tried to create jobs. We did the 2013 Economic Opportunity Act that actually helped a lot to get businesses in the state of New Jersey, keep businesses here to create those jobs. But again, I don't know if that's been working as well. That's something we have to circle back. All those tax credits, see how they're working, making sure that that is something that is that was the right thing to do. And if we need to adjust, making sure that people are staying true to what they signed up for, and then these people can get those jobs. And again, there's a lot of a lot of nuances. Like I said, transportation is very key. There could be jobs, but if you can't get to them and don't have where to live, you know, that becomes a problem. So we have an obligation to help. And like I said, we're in the 21st century. We shouldn't be able to say that 2.8 million residents, you know, over 30% live in poverty. That's absurd.
Are you prepared to move ahead in this upcoming budget session with a financial commitment? A lot of these programs or efforts sound like they're going to cost a lot of money.
And that's what it is. It all depends. Some of them may cost money, but some of them may not. It's just how do we manage? How do we help people? Like I said, do you have, you know, assistance, vouchers for different programs? How do we get it to the people that need it? Like I said, I come from a very urban area that a lot of people there are struggling. And it for them is, like I said, it's not that New Jersey is non-affordable, that they can pick up and leave, as when we talk about millionaires. No, the people that I know are struggling. They're not going anywhere. They have their families here, and they're trying to live paycheck to paycheck, and we got to help them.
So have you engaged the Senate at all in this yet? Or is
Not yet. This is something that I spoke about it in my speech when I was sworn into my second term. And I normally try to frame out some of the initiatives, and I think this is one of the key ones. So I think this is something that I think is very near and dear to my heart, because the people we're talking about are our family, our friends, our neighbors, that people that fall in these categories. When you talk about almost 1 out of every 3 individuals fall in this category, it's difficult. So we need to start, you know, focusing on the right, you know, place.
Have you spoken to the minority leader to make sure that the Republicans are fine to come on a Wednesday? Is it a Wednesday?
It's on a Wednesday. It's committees on call. So, you know, I know they'll be fine. I've had conversations actually with a minority leader in reference to the disparities that we have. And he actually has said that there's sometimes when you look at it, there's 2 New Jerseys. There's one of those people that, you know, as I said, leaving the state, but there's other ones that I said that need this. So he actually has acknowledged that. And I think you know, this is something that they'll be very mindful and hopefully, you know, call us.
And tell them what you're doing.
On the date, no, I actually have not told them about the date, but it'll be committees on call. The schedule is coming out. Everybody has to, you know, roll up their sleeves and come to work, Michael. So I'm sure nobody's going to have a problem with that.
One last question. Can you characterize the relationship with Senator Sweeney at this point? Tensions were high around the Atlantic City bill. So how are you getting along?
I've always gotten along great. For me, you never heard any rhetoric from me at all. So for me, I always do the job at hand. For me, is about the people of the state of New Jersey. It's never about Vinnie Prieto. It's always about doing the right thing. And for me, is getting done the job that I was sent here for. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.